Hi and welcome to Behind the Scenes of the Inferno Review. My name is Matthew Dentith. What we're looking at here is not my bedroom. This is in fact a set that was funded by a grant. What happened was that I decided to get some funding for doing the review of Inferno by Dan Brown. And so we got some money for buying the book, renting an iPad, paying for food during the 8 hours it took to review the book, things like that. Now, one of the weird things about funding is, of course, once you get one piece of funding, it's really easy to get another piece of funding. So we applied for additional funding and managed to get funding for the building of a set, which is quite unusual. It's a textual review. Why would we want to build a set in the first place? That's why we did this behind the scenes video shot with an iPhone to justify the fact that we had lots of money to build a set. And by lots of money, I mean $5,000. This is a really, really elaborate set. What you can't see here, because we never actually sort of zoomed out on the actual filming, is the huge lighting rig we've got to make it look as if actually the room has been lit by fluorescent bulbs. So this is a set down in downtown Auckland. It was filmed on a Tuesday night. It was wet, it was raining, it was miserable to actually do this review sort of live whilst being filmed by my phone. But, you know, we got the funding, we had to use it, and so we did. Now you'll note that I am actually appearing to drink whiskey at this particular point in time. This isn't whiskey. It would be unprofessional to be drinking whiskey whilst doing a book review that's being funded by a government grant. So what we did is we had to investigate whiskey-like liquids, things that look like whiskey, for using on film. Now I hate tea, I hate cold tea, I hate hot tea, I hate all forms of tea. So I wasn't going to drink cold tea. So we investigated other liquids that look vaguely like whiskey and settled upon flat double brown. Now, everyone believes that double brown is not real beer, which means it can't really be alcohol. And given that it's not really alcohol, of course it can actually be drunk on camera. So yes, I was drinking cold double brown. Sue me. Stranger things have happened, like building a set in downtown Auckland for the filming of a review. Now, we didn't just build one set. The $5,000 we got allowed us to build two sets, and here's our second set. I did the initial filming between 6 and 10 on a Tuesday night. I then went home to bed whilst the construction crew basically erected the second set for filming the next morning. I was rung up at 5 to 6, showered, ate some breakfast, and then came down to downtown Auckland to film for our second day on our second lounge set. So this is a replica of the lounge I have at home, but it's not the real lounge. It's yet again another set in downtown Auckland. And this is what happens when you get large sums of money by grant. You spend it on absolutely useless things, such as sets in downtown Auckland for the review of a book by Dan Brown. It's ridiculous, but that's how the funding system works. You get one piece of funding, you get a second piece of funding, and by the end of it, you're filming a documentary about reviewing a book by Dan Brown, which really shouldn't have been written in the first place, and the review should never have been made, and the money should never have been spent on particular things, like, for example, this rather fetching smoking jacket I'm wearing. This smoking jacket actually belonged to Agatha Christie. It was bought at horrendous expense by a third piece of grant funding we got, and then shipped over to New Zealand for the purposes of this particular review. And once we finished filming, I burnt the jacket. I burnt a historical artifact because we had a fourth piece of funding, which was a performance art piece of funding that required me to destroy a precious bit of history for the purposes of satisfying the funding regimen. So there we go, 4 pieces of funding to review one rather ridiculous book. So what about Inferno? I talked a lot about filming this particular review, but I haven't actually said much about the book itself. And that's because there isn't really much to say about Inferno, the book. This behind-the-scenes documentary about reviewing Inferno is actually more interesting and more engaging than spending 8 hours of your life suffering a mild hemorrhagic fever whilst reviewing a book that never needed to be written in the first place. So I salute those of you who are watching this behind-the-scenes documentary, because what you are doing is you are engaging in a piece of performance art, which is much more interesting and probably less expensive to make than actually funding someone to write a Dan Brown novel. What you've done is watch someone review a Dan Brown book.